Hi, everyone. Welcome to Roma to Sonoma, where we bridge the gaps between the old world and the new world of wine, culture, tradition, and wine. And I'm Lane. I'm a wine journalist in Sonoma.
And my name is Pia, and I am a sommelier here in Rome. And today we have an exciting episode because even though we're not actually experts in this area at all, we're going to be talking a little bit about natural wines. And Lane, you and I have discussed this a lot in the past. This is a controversial topic. People
Yes,
have
yes.
very strong opinions about these things. I think wherever you are in the world, I mean, I know that people in Italy and in Europe generally, France, wherever you are, there are very strong opinions, actually, particularly France, I have to say, very strong opinions about natural wines and what can be kind of called natural wines because there is no legal definition, right?
Yeah. And I also, it's interesting to me that it's so much bigger in Europe, in Italy and France, natural wine. The whole movement
Yeah,
is a lot
yeah,
bigger
yeah,
than it is
yeah.
in the States. It's very niche here still. It's still very much like a subculture. But I think that people have heard of it and they know it's out there, but don't really know what it is. So that's really, we just wanted to talk about that from a perspective of two people who are not experts in natural wine, but we know a little bit about it and we can kind of give you a little bit of information. So,
Right, right,
Pia,
right, right.
let's just start
So
with
let's
basic.
let's let's start with like the definition because
Yeah.
again, there is no definition.
First of all, there is no definition.
There's no
Pia,
definition.
I'll let you take that away.
No. But I think that's it. That's the funny thing, right? There is, as opposed to kind of organic or what they call here biological, there is a definition. It is certified by, the state at the national level. There is also a European certification for it. For natural wine, there is not. There are guidelines in, I think we were talking about before in France about on vin nature, vin de méthode, which is like method using a natural method. But again, it's kind of not really given a strict definition. And the one thing that everyone kind of agrees to is it's minimal intervention, right? And I feel like that's kind of the same of what you have in California or in the US more broadly. It's minimal intervention, both in in the vineyard, but also in the cellar. So just in the
Safe to
whole
say, broadly, minimal intervention, low to no intervention. That would be
exactly.
fair.
Exactly. And so the type of farming that we're talking about is sort of organic or biodynamic. You're talking about natural, kind of native yeast fermentation, nothing that you're adding, nothing commercial, and then little to no added sulfites. But again, there's no kind of exact measure of what it is that can be defined a natural wine or not. And as I said, certainly not at the kind of European level. And some people kind of call natural wines a little bit funky, a little bit
Alive.
exactly, unpredictable because one wine does not taste like another in, two different bottles, same vintage, and same thing, different vintages, even less so.
Yeah.
And
And
and yeah, and there are
some
some
people
people.
love that, and some people really like to have that, consistency. And so, and some people like it. It's a difficult, it is an interesting thing to explain. I think maybe we should dive into kind of the difference in the taste of natural wine. Would you agree? And
Yeah,
producers?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
go ahead. I think you know of one in Italy that's pretty popular.
Right. So I think in Sicily you have Arianna Occhipinti, who's kind of a pioneer of kind of elegant and minimal intervention wines. She's kind of a big name in Sicily.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other Italian, because I did a story on Giglio Island and they are using traditional methods there, which is essentially natural wine. Again, no definition around it, but it basically is like low to no intervention, although it varies depending on winemakers. And Giglio Island is a pretty good example of how this varies from winemaker to winemaker because some of them are doing more vinification and trying to do less. And others like Francesco Carfagna, who owns Altura Wines, is kind of like the godfather of natural wine in on Giglio. And I have one of the Giglio wines here today. This one is called Cocciuto. And it is
Oh,
made,
nice.
isn't that cute? Isn't that a cute
Very
name?
cute.
And it's made by Funtuccia, which is they've actually won Tre Bicchieri, which is the highest award that a wine can receive in Italy from Gamma Rosso. And it's so they're very well regarded. And I poured a glass to show you a little bit of what it looks like. So this is kind of the color.
Oh, look at that color.
Yeah.
Wow.
For those of you who are not seeing this, it's orange. It's orange. It's really deep gold to orange. I'll tell you, Pia, I've got to say a funny story because you see I'm using this glass that has something written on it. It's because I've broken all of my Riedel glasses. I need more Riedel glasses. It was this or a colored glass, wine glass. So this is to show the color. And that means that it's just been left on the skins for longer, but it's a white wine, it's Ansonica. But it's also made with low to no intervention. For example, as I was mentioning, Altura, all that he does a little bit of fining, but not micro fining. So that's all, that's it. I mean, he doesn't use SO2, which is a very common thing to use in wine, a little bit of sulfur so that it has more, lasts a little longer stability. And that's probably one of the most common additives in the winemaking process is sulfur. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yes, it is. That is absolutely true. I think there are another two or three that are not coming to my mind now. But yes,
There's
I
nitrogen.
mean, there is nitrogen, but sulfites is definitely the most, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Right.
and it's also the one that people kind of use as a measure as well. It's like how many sulfites you have is is often almost used as a yardstick by people who are trying to define the natural wines. So I think so conventional wines, which can have up to, I think it's like
So it
350.
typically begins with no pesticides or herbicides in the vineyard. So organically grown or biodynamically grown. So we're already starting off like very naturally in the vineyard itself. And then there you are. And you froze for a second. Go on. And then you were talking about I think you were going to say something about the yeast.
Yeah, so I think no, I mean basically usually they tend to use like native yeast fermentation as opposed to commercial yeasts. That
Right.
tends to be a very common one. And then you were saying about the non-fining or filtering, like this is also a really common one. But again, it depends, as you were saying, like there are some people who say there's no micro fining, no
Yeah.
micro filtering,
Microfiltering.
sorry.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then no added sugars, acids, or enzymes to alter the taste, basically.
Yeah.
So these are some of the really the guidelines that people use for natural wines. And again,
I
it's
ha
all about predictability, right? It's like
yeah. I
every
have
year the wine can be different.
right. And I have to say, as an aside, it's almost like you really have to even know how wines are made in the modern day to understand the differences. Because as we're talking about these things, many people don't know that these things even happen in the cell in the winery. You know that there are any chemicals added, that there are extra yeasts added to do certain things for fermentation, or that there are particles in wines that are filtered out before it's bottled for certain types of wines. So that is something to be said as well. Like if you're not really familiar with wine making, this might not make a lot of sense to you. It's almost like saying this is the way wine was made for thousands of years before modern day processes. So natural wine is in a lot of ways going back to the basics.
Exactly. I think that's true. I think that's very true. And it's an interesting, almost ideological argument that's used by a lot of people who sort of have natural wine enthusiasts who go against the backlash from traditionalists who sort of say, listen, this is many years of refinement, scientific research, and, a whole body of evidence to support making what it means to make a very good wine that is predictable, that can age, that can do all of these things. The natural wine people say, yeah, right, but that's really like stuck in a certain part of time, which is what, like 50 to 100 years,
Like
whereas
100 years,
winemaking
yeah.
we know is so much longer than that and was done in a very different way. So it's almost a return to that rather than an abandonment of this very short time in which, you know, modern practices were adopted that have kind of made up the status quo.
And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that this modern type of winemaking really started after the Industrial Revolution, when they sort of discovered ways to can things, to make products that would last for a long time. Would you say that's pretty much in line with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I think it's that. I think it is also to do with just a really big demographic boom as well, right? There was a huge increase in production and excuse me, and literally the population grew so rapidly that there was a push to have a higher yields, to be able to get prices down and to be able to really provide wine to a large portion of the population. And that's kind of,
That
you know,
makes
led to
perfect sense.
wine. And
Yeah,
that
no,
went, you know, really to the detriment in a lot of cases of quality, to the quality. And again, it was part of this general trend to sort of move away from perhaps more indigenous grapes and indigenous practices to more of this kind of streamlined factory type, you know, higher yield, cheaper products that, you know, were also accessible to everyone.
right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's very, very interesting. Do you want to talk about maybe a little bit about some of the natural wine producers in California?
Yeah, yeah. What I've discovered is, because I've been working more in the wine industry and not really had much of an interest in natural wine until recently, really until I went to Giglio and then I went to Georgia, and both these places were using kind of natural methods. It really opened my eyes, and I started, you know how it is. Once something is in your mind, you start seeing it everywhere. So
Hmm.
now, and I'm talking to people a lot more about it. So I've discovered that a lot of places that I know and that I've gone to also make natural wine. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here more. It's not necessarily that there's a natural wine producer, but that producers make some natural wines too. Now, I do know that there are some full-on natural producers, like Hillsburg, we have one called Jupiter, but then there are like Idlewild Wines and Leo Steen. They are making wines and they're making natural wines, but they're because there's such a natural wine movement, natural wine drinkers gravitate to them. But like I said, Idlewild, I've been a wine member there and I just didn't really understand. Like maybe you wouldn't know that some of
Yeah.
their wines are natural. So it's just an interesting thing, but I will say it's not, it's still, I was talking to the owner of Jupiter a couple of weeks ago, and we were just talking about the culture around natural wine, and he explained that it is very much a subculture. It's kind of like the punk movement in a way, where that's kind of where it's at here in the States. It's still kind of like it's a certain kind of person, and then they're very into it. They're just very into it. So I'm more and more interested in I really want to learn more and try more of these wines to just I've kind of gotten past what I would say was my preconceived idea about natural wine. And so now I just want to learn more about it, because I do think that it is something that could become a real savior for the wine industry. Because there are a lot of it's something that's very interesting to the younger demographic.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And it's, I suppose in some way I would say it's probably healthier if you're going for, natural things. It's made naturally without the herbicides and the pesticides and all of that. That's still organic, which we still have that for most things. But I don't know. I think that there's a potential market there that could become bigger, and maybe, I don't know. It's just a thought. It's a thought that there's a bright light. There are a couple of bright lights in the wine industry as certain areas fade, other things start to take off, like the white wines that we've talked about before, or just lower alcohol wines, and also natural wines.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, the two can coexist very, very well. I don't think it's like a competition between the two. But yeah, here as well, I think there's a broader movement here. But again, I think it's more focused in France than it is in Italy. But I think it's a lot of question of kind of personal preference, also of tastes. And,
And
you know,
there's
a lot of some people love that kind of unpredictable and raw natural wine kind of flavors. And some people just, you know, don't appreciate those aromas in the same way. So, you know, and that there is something to be said for the fact that, you know, what we would consider perhaps from a traditional sense, those kind of flaws are an expression of the terroir, an expression of just what happens of authenticity, you know, as you try and build these wines, and some will succeed and some will not. But, you know, there are other consumers that sort of say, listen, if you're, you know, and by the way, this is also something we haven't touched on, but the costing, the price of these wines, right? So I can tell you now for sure, in Italy, natural wines come at a higher cost than their equivalents in a kind of conventional sense. And so what that means is that you're asking people to accept an unpredictability of a wine while paying that, you know, more than they would for an average wine. It's a hard sell.
that is so interesting. I didn't realize that. In
Yeah,
fact,
you know, they are. They're more expensive.
that surprises me because I know that at least talking to people here locally, natural wine producers, I've asked the question, like, do you need different machinery or anything in the winery? And no, you don't. You don't. So
No,
what's there's no additional cost to make it, right? So would it be more expensive, do you think?
I don't know, but it is. And in Italy, I can tell you, and I think it's the same in France, it's more expensive.
It's probably the same here. That's a good thing for
Mm-mm,
me to check out. I hadn't thought of it at all.
mm-mm.
So.
No,
Yeah, look at that
exactly.
little glass. But yeah, the flaws. I think what some people will call flaws, and and natural wine people will call authenticity. It's kind of like my story that when we talked about Georgia and Goodall saying that, and he was calling all of the non-traditionally made wines in Georgia factory wines, like it
Yeah.
was a really negative thing until we kind of honed in on what that meant, and it just meant that yeah, they're filtered, they were using so some of the modern technologies to make the wine, and so that there's a preconceived idea on both sides about each of the other wines. Like it's either a dead wine or it's an alive wine. There are so many different ways to look at it. But I really don't think I would ever go one way or the other. I'm just interested in natural wine now and want to know more about it, but I wouldn't not drink, you know, factory wine.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. But yeah, we definitely have to get trying more wine, more
Well,
natural wines.
I want to know what other people think too. I really want to know. We want to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts about natural wine? Do you think that it's something that will be bigger in the future? Is it only going to be bigger, or do you think it's just a passing fad? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Let us know in the show notes.
The show notes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, let us know and we'll follow up with some more. We're going to do more on natural wine. I have a feeling because it is, I believe, something that is going to only grow in popularity. So, anyway, thanks, Pia. Thanks for your wisdom.
Thank you to you too, Lane. And yeah, look forward to hearing from our listeners.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye. Till next time.
Bye.